All right. I want to be respectful of all y'all's time. I know a couple people might have to jump early, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Other folks might join as we get going, which is fine. Hopefully that won't be too distracting. So thanks to you all for joining and taking the time for our abortion defender recruitment training. Really glad to be here with all of you. It's been a tumultuous couple of months in terms of abortion rights and reproductive health and rights. So we're glad to see you all here showing up to keep doing the work, even though it's been a really exhausting time. You can go to the next slide, Yasmin. So I know we just tried to do a little fun icebreaker, but just going over the agenda for tonight, we're going to do just another quick warm up and we'll just have people drop this in the chat. Just curious how you're all taking care of yourselves as you fight for abortion rights, given that this has been a really hard time, really trying time for those of us who care really deeply about this issue. So go ahead, you can start just dropping in the chat now, anything you're doing to take care of yourself, whether that's playing with animals or being outside or exercise. If you want to share, you can drop that in the chat. Then we'll also go over kind of the basic definition of what recruitment is, talk through a couple of principles of recruitment, talk through how we build our base, and then talk through recruitment in action. Next slide, please. So the next couple of slides are going to feature some community commitments and some group agreements. I'm not going to read through all of them. I'm just going to let you all look at them. These are just some promises we make to each other as we're sharing the space tonight and as we're doing this training together, just to ensure that people feel welcomed, people feel safe, people feel like they can speak up and be who they are. If you have anything else you want to add to these two lists or that you think is missing, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. You can go to the next slide, Yasmin, please. So these are sort of basic, just like be decent to each other, be respectful, you know, give people a chance, sort of basic things like that. You can go to the next slide, Yasmin. All right. So getting into it, this is going to be a Recruitment 101 training. This might be completely new for some of you. This might be old hat for others of you. Some of you might be falling somewhere in the middle, wherever you're coming to, however you're approaching this, it's fine. If you've done this a bunch before, it's always good to refresh. If you haven't done it before, it's pretty simple stuff that you'll pick up really quickly. And really important feature of organizing. Another thing we want to keep in mind is that, and we'll talk about this in more depth throughout the training, but our movements, our campaigns, our efforts, in this case to defend abortion rights, are the strongest when we have as many people and as many different kinds of people involved in the work as possible. So we want to be really mindful of not just recruiting people who look like us or have the same exact background as us, but people of different racial backgrounds, people of different genders, people of different gender identities, people who might be immigrants, people from the LGBTQ community, people, from all walks of life, because we want to be, inclusive of everyone, because that's the socially just thing to do. But we also are so much better and stronger and smarter when we pull in people from all different communities and walks of life. So that's something I'll try to touch on throughout this training. Next slide, please. So why do we recruit? The goal of this overview is to introduce the concepts that, one, recruitment is the fundamental building block of organizing, and two, that recruitment helps us to build power. So recruitment is the essential ingredient and building block of social change. If we have millions of people on our side and ready to take action, millions, we don't have to get carried away. we can use a smaller, more manageable number like 10 people. But the point is when we have a certain good critical mass of people, we have our biggest resource ready to fight for progressive change. And what we're here to do is build our list, build our numbers, and then activate those people who support us to take action to support abortion rights. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of context. Recruitment will play a vital role in all the organizing work we do. And there is also an inherent value in engaging a lot of people. So we recruit people because we have to, right? The only way we can make progress is to continue adding people, adding energy, adding people to our movement and asking them to do stuff. That's just kind of a cornerstone of organizing and activism work. But we also really believe and have made a philosophical commitment to promoting civic engagement. So regardless of the particular issue, getting people involved in activism is really important because our system of democracy really depends on it. And there's just real inherent value in doing that. Next slide. All right, so I want to spend a couple of minutes just thinking and talking through how you all were recruited. It can either be for this call, this training, or other work with Population Connection Action Fund, or it can be for work on another social cause or political campaign or cause. So feel free to just drop in the chat how you've been recruited to any sort of cause you've been recruited for. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to ask Grace on our team to share how they were recruited to some of the organizing work they've done.
Thanks, Rebecca. So I am from Western North Carolina, which is pretty widely known before the redistricting as like a very, very gerrymandered part of our country. The campus that I was actually attending school at had a dorm that was split in half. So one roommate was in one district and their roommate was in another district. So I only learned about this because I was talking to a good friend and coworker of mine who then went on to introduce me to an organizer with Democracy NC, who I would later go on to intern with. But I would never have heard of that organization if she hadn't taken the time to educate me about both the issue and what they were doing about it.
Thanks, Grace. Does anyone, since we're a small group, as long as people can commit to being concise, if anyone wants to come off mute and share, that's fine too. If not, that's okay too. I will just share an example. I started getting into doing some work for volunteer work for political campaigns when I was in college. And I was recruited by my good friend Alex, who has always been from a very young age, been very politically engaged and plugged in. And we worked on a campaign together to elect the first openly gay state senator in Massachusetts. So that was a really powerful and fun experience. Next slide, please. So we're going to next talk about 3 principles of recruitment. 1, that recruitment is power. 2, that recruitment is personal. And 3, that recruitment is ongoing. Slide, please. So first, let's talk about how recruitment is power. It's, as we talked about before, recruitment is an essential ingredient to organizing. If you're not recruiting people, then you don't have people to do the work and take the action. And we need more people to make more change. If we're not growing, we're not doing our job. And when we are growing and getting more and more people, the more people we have, the more social change we can create, the bigger movement we can create. And that's how the changed future that we're all looking for, in this case, a future that includes abortion rights rather than having them banned left and right, comes sooner. So just want to take a minute and brainstorm with the group. Feel free to come off mute or just drop in the chat. What do you think of when you hear the word power? And what are some examples of power that you can think of. We'll give folks a minute. Big money, exactly. Corporations, billionaires, CEOs. What other people think of when they hear power? Political power, government, exactly. Economic power, social capital, relationships, information networks, exactly. How about one or two more? That's great. Thanks to y'all for sharing. And I think the important thing to remember about power is that power to me means results, opportunities, control of events. Yep, great. I think the thing to keep in mind about power is that whether or not you think it's good or bad, or you think it should exist or it shouldn't exist, it does exist, and it kind of infiltrates all aspects of our lives, from the personal to the professional, to the political, to the social, to the economic. And when we think about power in organizing, we want it, right? Because if we have power, if we have people power, we're able to move people to do things. If we have political power, we're able to enact change. So we really want power in our organizing work. And that's how we, the more political power we gain, the easier it is to push forward the policies we want signed into law and to create the change we're advocating for. Next slide, please. So recruitment is personal, is the second principle. And thinking through this, this is pretty self-explanatory, but people get involved in working on a social cause or a political campaign for different reasons. It could be self-interest. They want to learn a new skill. They want to improve something about themselves. They are curious and passionate about the issue. It could be an altruistic motivation. They want to help people and make the world a better place. It could be social. They want to meet new people and cool people who are working on a great cause and have a little bit of that social community and interaction. Or it could be transactional. They perhaps are getting paid to do this work, or they're promised a grade or something to put on their resume in exchange for it. So I want to be really clear that all four of these motivations and reasons are equally valid. One is not better than the other. We do not prioritize one above the other. But I will say it's really important to know for yourself which of these reasons motivates you. And as you start to recruit people, to get a sense by asking them and talking to them and observing them, what motivates the people whom you've recruited. And the other thing is to sort of regularly check in with yourself and the folks you've recruited, because motivations can and often do change over time, and that's totally okay. But it's good to kind of always be aware, because like anything in life, if you know why you're doing something, why you're committed to it, you're more likely to stick with it and work on it and practice it and hone your skills. Next slide, please. The third principle we wanted to talk about is that we have a little acronym for it, which is ABR, always be recruiting. Recruitment is ongoing, right? So you always need to be recruiting new people. And then once someone is initially recruited into the campaign, movement, whatever you're working on, in our case, I recruit a lot of people over the next few months to defend abortion rights. The recruitment process continues as motivations change or as circumstances change. People go from being students to being professionals. People go from living in Ohio to living in Arizona. So we want to make sure that we're always sort of constantly recruiting both the new folks as well as the folks we already have. And in the spirit of always be recruiting, Tessa has dropped 2 actions in the chat that you all can take either now or later on if you want to copy the links. The first is a contact your senators action. asking them to support the Women's Health Protection Act, which would codify, put into law Roe v. Wade, essentially. So it would sort of kind of enshrine the right to abortion federally. So that's a quick email action. It takes approximately 2 minutes to do it. It would be great if y'all could do it. And the second one is what we call a thank and spank. And it's about the Right to Contraception Act, which the House of Representatives passed 2 weeks ago, I believe. This is a message that, depending on where you live and who your representatives are, you'll either be sending a thank you message, to them for voting in favor of the Right to Contraception Act, which would put into law the right to purchase and access birth control, or you'll be sending a shaming message to them saying, I can't believe you didn't vote for something as basic as the right to birth control. So feel free to copy those or do those right now. Next slide, please. So the next thing we want to talk about are some recruitment tactics. These are about 5 different tactics you can use. Again, in terms of the first one, casting a wide net, going back to what I said initially, which is that, we want to recruit a wide net, because the more people you recruit, the more likely you are to get more people who stay on as activists and are interested in helping do the work and taking action. We also want to be thoughtful and mindful about who we're recruiting, right? We want to not just recruit people who look exactly the same as us, or who come from the same neighborhoods, or who work in the same community. We want to be casting a wide net to include people of all different backgrounds, of all different races, of all different gender identities, so that we have the richest, widest, deepest pool of activists possible. The other thing you want to do is reach out to community leaders. I would say this is especially true if you're doing recruitment for the first time in a community, but it's really true regardless of where you're organizing, how long you've been there, and how well you know the community. You want to reach out to the people who are well respected and most well known in the community. So that could be faith leaders, that could be local political leaders, that could be educators, anyone who sort of has a voice and a platform within the community and is recognized, and ask them to connect you with other people. We've already talked about contacting a wide, diverse array of community groups. And this applies not only to the sort of areas I mentioned in terms of race and gender, et cetera, but also in terms of kind of thinking outside of the box beyond just activist groups or political groups. Sometimes, we've had a lot of success doing work with arts organizations and film groups. And so kind of looking and seeing what's out there and seeing what organizations might have crossover with you. Because there's oftentimes some really interesting partnerships to be had with people who don't do the exact same work, but tend to attract the same types of progressive, forward-thinking people. The next tactic is, we just call it, wearing your heart on your sleeve. This does not mean that you need to burst into tears every time you talk about the issue, although if that is what you want to do, that's fine. This more just means being genuine and open about who you are, why you're doing this work, why you got involved, why you're sticking with it, and being willing to share that with people. So again, kind of going back to identifying your motivations and being able to verbalize that to people, because when you're asking people to do something understandably and asking them to join a movement or a campaign, they're going to naturally ask, why should I and why do you? So being prepared with that answer is really helpful. And then, excuse me, the final tactic we'd recommend is to create community, right? People, regardless of how they come, what motivates them to initially join a campaign or an activist effort, everyone wants to feel part of a community, right? They want to feel like they belong. They want to feel like they're getting to know people. So anything you can do, whether it's virtual or in person, whether it's, outdoor in-person meetups or potlucks at someone's home, or a Zoom happy hour or a trivia night, anything kind of fun you can do to get people comfortable with each other and get to know each other is a really great way to also recruit people and to maintain people you've recruited. Next slide, please. So how do we build our base? This is the key to any successful organizing work, campaign, effort, political campaign. And it's a pretty simple concept, right? I'm sure you're all familiar with it. We just want to figure out who is with us on the issue, bring them in, and then activate them to take action. And again, just kind of hammering home, the more people we have, the more power we have, the bigger our movement gets, and the quicker, the changed future we're looking for comes. So we do this through a concept called relational organizing. Next slide, please. So what is relational organizing? There's a kind of mini definition up here that's like fairly wonky. I'll let you go ahead and read that. But in simpler terms, relational organizing is a tool within a broader organizing strategy to build power in which individuals, groups, or organizations harness their personal networks and relationships to affect change. That's still kind of a mouthful of a definition. So like in actual simple terms, it's telling the people that care about us why they should care about this issue, in this case, abortion rights, and bringing them into that work. Slide, please. So why does relational organizing work? So there's a little graphic here that may or may not be helpful. I know it's a little small and hard to see. But when you recruit people and the people recruit people they know, you have more contact opportunities, right? You're reaching out to already existing networks rather than starting by, cold calling people. There's a place for that as well in organizing, obviously. But you have more contact opportunities. You also have higher contact rates because if you're reaching out to friends, family, coworkers, it's much more likely that they're going to respond to you as opposed to someone who is receiving an email from you, for the first time. You have to do that as well, but relational organizing is a really helpful way to get going. You're also going to have higher quality, more personal interaction. Again, if you know someone, you're going to be able to catch up about their kids, their families, their job, their summer before you get into the work you're doing and why you're doing it. And as a result of all of those things I just mentioned, you're going to have higher, more consistent engagement. You're going to have people who continue to show up, who are committed, and who are really interested in doing the work. Next slide, please. So once we have started to get people, kind of breaking this slide into actually 2 slides, you're going to want to collect the names of people who are with us on this issue, and then you're going to want to get them to do a bunch of stuff. So sort of initially, the best way to recruit people is to get them the best way to engage people once you've recruited them is to get them to sign a petition. Petitions reflect broad public support of an issue, and they really help us win campaigns. They help us build a list. Then we have a pool to recruit from that list. And then it also, we can send petitions to our elected officials and let them know like, hey, this real critical mass of people cares about this issue. So once you've collected, and that's kind of also always be recruiting, that's kind of an ongoing process. Once you have people to draw from, a pool to draw from, you can ask them to do things like call their members of Congress, take social media action, sign up for an event, things of that nature. Next slide, please. So what we've been working on this summer is signing people up as abortion defenders. That's the name for the core of people we're trying to recruit. We'll be working with through the summer and through the midterm elections. And we have a couple of goals. One, we'd like to recruit 500 abortion defenders to join us. I think we're close to about having 200 people signed up. So we'd like to increase that to 500. We'd like across that larger group, we'd like to record and post 50 videos of calls to legislators to protect abortion. So what that will look like is just having people very basic, and we'll give you the how-tos of how to do this and a video example before we ask you to do this. But it's basically picking up your phone, calling your senator or congressperson saying, hi, my name is Rebecca. Really want to ask the senator to support the Women's Health Protection Act to, make into law Roe v. Wade so that the right to abortion is protected federally. This is really important. Thank you so much for your time and your commitment. Hang up, record yourself doing that. And then that's something we can share with other people who might be nervous or might not have done something like this before, and then they can get involved too. And we also can show on social media to senators and congresspeople, people are making these asks. People are wanting you to do this work. Then we're asking people to commit to 300 hours of GOTV, which stands for Get Out the Vote work, for phone and text banks. Again, we'll provide trainings on this. We'll provide you with all the skills and tools you need. But in a nutshell, it's calling people on the phone and texting people, asking them to support candidates who are pro reproductive rights and health, who are progressive, and who are going to help defend abortion rights once elected. And then the other thing we want to do, again, across the larger group of abortion defenders, is record and post 50 videos, sharing, not 50 videos each, one each at minimum or at maximum, sharing why you fight for abortion using the hashtag whatever the reason. And again, that's something we would share on social media, on our Population Connection Action Fund accounts, to really sort of get the word out there that all these people really care about abortion. Next slide, please. So one thing, and apologies, this is a little out of order. I should have switched these last two slides, but in any case, thinking really specifically about relational organizing, something we'll ask y'all to do. We hope that everyone on this call will sign up to be an abortion defender if you haven't already. And what we'll ask you to do is identify and then recruit 5 activists from your networks. So that could be your family, your friends, your coworkers, people you're involved in another community group with. And then chat with them, brainstorm the kinds of actions they'd be excited to take. Do they want to make phone calls for Get Out the Vote? Do they want to call their senators? Are they good writers? Do they maybe want to write a letter to the editor? Are they really savvy on social media? Are they good graphic designers? Do they want to design something that can be shared on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook? And then the important thing is to follow up with them and ask them, really invite them to take action again and again and again. And then rinse and repeat, just kind of run through those steps again as you recruit new people and as you continue to recruit in small ways the people you've already pulled into the fold. So, I'm thinking that my math at the bottom of this is incorrect. So disregard that. But the point is if we have 10 abortion defenders and each of those 10 defenders get 10 people to take action throughout the summer, then we have 100 people, right? And then we've gone from a group of 10 to a group of 100 fairly quickly by each just, pulling in people that we know. So it's a pretty effective strategy. Next slide, please. So I know some of you who have not done this before might be wondering, like, okay, that sounds great. Like, I've identified in my head 5 people I can reach out to, but like, how do I start these conversations? Isn't it awkward? What do I say? And that's a totally normal response and reaction. I have a little guest coming. Apologies. This is the what happens when you do 7 o'clock meetings with the 4-year-old. He wants mama. So these are just a couple of examples. These are by no means scripts that you need to use verbatim. Just a couple of like templates, skeletons to get you thinking about how you might approach these conversations. So the first is an initial message. You could say like, hey, Joe, how are you doing? I'm an abortion defender with Population Connection Action Fund this summer. We're working to defend abortion rights and to elect pro-reproductive health and rights candidates in the upcoming midterm elections. I was wondering if you had time to catch up next week. And this can be over text, over email, over phone, at the farmer's market, when you run into each other, whatever medium you're most comfortable with. And then assuming they agree to chat, the second example is how the conversation might go. And it could go something like, you kind of chat and catch up, say, how are you? How's your family? How's work? How's your summer been? Tell them what you're up to this summer and fall. Tell them what you've been learning about abortion bans and abortion restrictions that are happening on a daily basis. And kind of see, are you with me on this issue? What do you care about? Can you take this specific action with me? And I've left in the "are you with me on this issue?" In case there are people in your lives that might be you might be unsure, they might be on the fence about abortion rights, or you're not really sure. So I leave it in there, to kind of sweep those people in if that's a possibility. I will also note, though, that I really wouldn't recommend spending a lot of time recruiting people who you know for a fact are ideologically not with you. I would never tell someone that it's not worth it to have a meaningful conversation with someone in their life who's important to them. But sort of in terms of organizing efficiency, it's not really a good use of time to try to spend time recruiting people who, for example, are really anti-choice or anti-abortion, because you might have a conversation in which you learn things from each other and there's value to that, but you're not going to it's unlikely you're going to get them to join your side. Next slide, please. So just wanted to run over some key takeaways from tonight. There's really three big ones. The first is that recruitment is about building power by leveraging personal networks. The second is that organizing and recruitment are personal. So you really need to know your own story of why you're organizing so that you can share it with the people you're recruiting and you can help them develop and tell their own stories. And then recruitment is an ongoing effort that requires constant upkeep. It's something you're going to be constantly doing, a skill you're constantly be working on, and really key for organizing work. Next slide, please. So putting this into action, what does this look like starting at 8 o'clock or whenever we break from this group? So just kind of recapping some of the tasks we'll be asking of abortion defenders, asking you all to invite 5 friends or family or colleagues to be an abortion defender with you. Record a video of yourself talking about why you fight for abortion. And then recruit 5 people to take action between now and the election. So that can be the same 5 people. It can be an additional 5 people, whatever kind of works for you and however wide your networks are and whoever you think you can bring into the conversation. The other 2 things we'll be asking are for folks to join us for our other upcoming August events. Details are TBD, we'll keep you posted. But we're going to be doing one on the impact abroad of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, kind of the ripple effect that's happening in other countries around the world in terms of abortion rights, given that the United States just, completely decimated the right to abortion in this country. And then we'll be doing another event at the end of the month featuring abortion providers who are really on the front lines of this work and doing whatever they can to continue to provide, the care that people need and want and deserve. Next slide, please. Oh, that might be my final one, actually. It is. So we'll leave that up there so that folks can continue just kind of like if you want to jot down some of the things we'll be asking people to do. Tessa has dropped in the chat our abortion defender sign up. You can feel free to sign that if you'd like to join us. And then if folks have any questions, we have about 20 minutes left, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. You can either drop them in the chat or you can feel free to just come off of mute and ask any questions you might have.
Can you actually sign up for tonight? I thought you did sign up for.
Oh, Amory, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that any better?
A little bit, yeah.
Yes, I was just wondering, I thought when you signed up for tonight, it said you want to be a virtual defendant, and you just signed up for it already.
So I'm still having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but I think what you said is that you had already signed up to be an abortion defender.
So if you've done that, get information from you then.
Yeah, that's great. And if you already have, we have your information. We just recruited people from a couple of different lists. So it's possible some folks on here have not yet signed up. But if you've already signed up, awesome. We're so glad to have you. That means you're on our list, you're getting our newsletter. So we'll continue to email you and ask you to do stuff.
Yes, awesome. This is perfect timing. I'm going to go ahead and jump off, but I'll be looking for updates, so I'll be looking some people to reach out to.
Awesome. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night, all. Thank you.
Have a good night. Any other questions or thoughts folks have? Anyone has just kind of general thoughts about how they're feeling at this time, given all this turmoil with abortion rights? Happy to hear from you as well. Well, if not, thank you all so much for joining. Thanks for your time. We're really grateful for it. If you have not yet signed up to be an abortion defender, please go ahead and do that. We'd love to have you all. We need to have all of you. Feel free to copy the 2 actions that Tessa dropped, the Right to Contraception Think and Spank and the Women's Health Protection Act. Contact your senators. We hope that this was useful. Look forward to seeing you at some upcoming events, and I hope everyone has a good night and is staying cool. Thank you.